Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video, I'll be talking about the best books that I read in 2020 and then some books that I'm really looking forward to reading in 2021. This video topic was suggested by one of my subscribers, Drew, so shout out to Drew. Thanks for suggesting the video. This one was fun to kind of look back because I've read quite a lot of books in 2020, and so it took me a while to kind of go through, so sorry Drew that it took a while to get to this video, but had a lot of fun looking in. And I do want to note that these are in really no particular order. This isn't like a complete ranking or anything by that means, just talking about books that I really did enjoy this year and some I'm looking forward to with next year. So I am going to start with one of the favorite books I've read in just a while as a standalone, which is Good Omens by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman. I watched the show first, actually, and really enjoyed the show. Knew I had to read the book. This was just so much fun from start to finish. And I really think it's a very accessible book to just about anyone. It's not really as much in the fantasy realm as what I normally read, so it was a little bit different, but just a blast from start to finish. Really great book. You can check out too. I do have reviews for all of these books that I've read this year, so you can always check those out. I'll mention as well. So that was definitely one, but the next thing, keeping on with at least one half of that duo, is going to be Discworld. And I didn't pick a specific book here, but as you can see, here's the Discworld books, barring Color Magic, which I just simply did not like and didn't read this year, but all the rest of these I did read this year. It's hard to pick a Discworld novel that I liked the most. Honestly, Guards was a lot of fun. I really liked Equal Rights as well. It was one of the other ones that I just really enjoyed the dialogue and some of the ideas there. So jumping into Discworld for the first time in 2020 really was a whole lot of fun. I read those between a lot of more like darker, deeper fantasies as well, so it was really nice kind of jumping back and forth and going through and switching off with kinds of books. So really enjoyed doing it. But Discworld, I feel like, needs almost no introduction. Most people are at least a little bit familiar with it, but it's extremely comic, funny, sarcastic type fantasy. It makes fun of all the different tropes and just has that kind of classic Pratchett style. So there's a ton to like. Like I said, I really didn't like The Color of Magic, and I felt like for the most part the books tended to improve a bit as they went along. I still have so much more Discworld to get through. For the most part, as far as I've gotten, a lot of it's been the first book in one of the kind of sub-series, so a lot more to come, but really enjoyed Discworld in general. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was the Lycanius trilogy, and so that started with The Shadow of What Was Lost, and then An Echo of Things to Come, and The Light of All That Falls. So I read the entire trilogy in a row after getting the first book earlier this year. And while there are certainly some issues with the Lycanius trilogy, and it's not a perfect trilogy or like an instant classic, it just was one of the first series in a while to just like immediately really hook me, and I had a lot of fun reading them. There was a ton there. It was something definitely you could tell James Islington was a big fan of The Wheel of Time, and also Brandon Sanderson, so kind of an author who likes other authors that I really like, going and playing around with the world, doing a lot of fun things. It was just really a blast reading so much of that, and I definitely look forward to, I know there's going to be at least another book in that world, if not more. I think it's definitely something that could be explored, and I look forward to seeing what James Islington does next, as I think he is an author who has a whole lot of potential to become even better, and did a really good job with opening up with the Lycanius trilogy. That one is a bit hard to explain overall because there's kind of a lot going on, but starts with your kind of young characters who are involved in the bigger fight. It involves an interesting magic system, a couple of different magic systems actually that involve pulling energy from the air basically. That's just kind of always there. There's all kinds of interesting weird things with time travel and prophecies and just a ton going on. And really it was a very fun trilogy. So that was something I really did enjoy quite a lot. Switching veins now almost completely, is the Broken Empire trilogy by Mark Lawrence. And this was my first read of Mark Lawrence. I definitely will be reading more Mark Lawrence, and that started with the Broken Empire. And I know a lot of people were kind of iffy on this, mostly because the character you follow, Jorg, is definitely a terrible person, and interesting to hear the different narrations. But this series was just fascinating. They were so quick to get through. I read most of these in about a day or two, and I really, really, really enjoyed them. And it was a great first look for me into getting Mark Lawrence. And we follow Jorg, who is a young prince who has dreams of taking over, wants to be king, wants to be emperor, and that's kind of his path throughout. It is first person, and it's kind of in a post-apocalyptic, after nuclear fallout world. So we actually get lots of fantasy, but also some sci-fi elements in it, and just really, really interesting. And Mark Lawrence is most certainly an author that I will be looking to read a lot more of his stuff. I only read so far this trilogy. I know he has several other trilogies. I definitely plan on getting into a lot there. So, sticking with another trilogy, I do absolutely have to mention the Thomas Covenant, the first Thomas Covenant, the Unbeliever trilogy. I randomly got this older box set, and you can tell it's definitely pretty old. And it's pretty plain as far as we have the covers, but I am so glad I bought this at my used bookstore, because this has become one of my favorite series that I read after the first trilogy, and it's just kind of unparalleled to anything else I read this year. I'm not saying it's the best fantasy ever by that means, but it's just very, very different. It has a very classic fantasy feel, and the way Donaldson writes is just something different, but in a really, really good way. His prose is just so interesting, and it's very intricate and complex, and I found myself really, really sucked into this world. I did do a video for all three of the books in it, so if you want to hear more, I definitely would suggest you watch those. But I had a mixed reaction at first toward Fellsbane, the first book. Felt the Ill-Earth War was a practically perfect book, and then the third book, The Power That Preserves, I thought simply was a perfect book. It just was a fantastic trilogy. It's another one that falls into the definitely wanting to read more of Thomas Covenant and Stephen R. Donaldson as well, but we'll get to those in a second, because of course I have to talk about Rhythm of War, because I did read Rhythm of War this year. I did a whole series of video where I reread the Stormlight Archive, and then I did summaries of them, and I loved Rhythm of War quite a lot. It had a lot of surprises, did a lot of things I was certainly not expecting, but it was fantastic, and I am really sad that I have to wait so long to get the next book, because I need the next book like yesterday. So, of course, as I'm sure you've been able to tell from my shelf, I'm a huge Sanderson fan, and I own most of his books, and I will buy just about anything he puts out, because I just really, really like him. You've all heard about Rhythm of War and Brandon Sanderson and Stormlight. I don't think you really could escape that, especially the last couple of months around the release, so I won't dig in any deeper, but really was a book that I enjoyed quite a lot. So, kind of moving over to the things that were some of the best I read, and also are things that I want to continue on as going on. The first I want to mention is the Farseer trilogy by Robin Hobb. So I read Assassin's Apprentice just right here toward the end of the year, and really, really enjoyed this book. It was one of those things that I'd heard so many mixed reviews, people who really, really like it, or say you had to get really further in. It's an incredibly character-driven story following Fitz, who's a bastard and then has to be thrown into the world of politics and courts and kings very suddenly, and also, among other things, is trained to be an assassin. But I really enjoyed reading about this character, and quite a lot, and thought the book was very different and unique in how it was presented, but in a great way. So I did, as a Christmas gift, get the next two books in the Farseer trilogy, and so these are definitely pretty high on the list. These are things that I have really been wanting to read. So Royal Assassin and Assassin's Quest. are something that I really enjoyed the first book, and so I'm really looking forward to continuing on with that series. So then the next, that's in kind of that same category, something that was some of the best I read, and also a lot more, and I always have to apologize for these terrible covers, but that was the first two books of The Crown of Stars by Kate Elliott. So we have King's Dragon, the first one, which isn't as bad as it could be, and Prince of Dogs, which is much, much worse. I got the first book, I'd seen these at my used bookstore for a while, and I finally was able to find a copy of the first book, and then got it. And there's actually a whole lot of this series left. It is a 7-book series. So here are the rest here of the Crown of Stars series. I'm going to put them down because that's a lot of hardcovers and they're kind of heavy. This is a very classic feeling medieval fantasy, but with just some of the best world building I've ever seen. I really think it has the potential to be one of my favorite series of all time. Once I finish it, so something I am really, really excited to finish in 2021, and something I will definitely be giving pretty high priority to it. So those are some things that I am very, very excited for going forward. So getting into the other books that I'm very excited to read. Now, I feel like there should be more new releases here, but I don't know. Every time I look at one of those, here are the most exciting books that are going to be coming out, pretty much none of them seem interesting to me. So I don't tend to look at a lot of those. If you know any really big new releases that I should definitely read, let me know. I'm always happy to have more books. But the first one, and I don't have yet, but am hoping to get soon, is going to be Malice by John Gwynne. I mentioned that a couple of times, and that whole series, The Faithful and Fallen, I believe, that whole series is one that I'm really excited to start. Some people who have similar taste to me have said really, really good things about it, so it's something I'm really excited to start that series, and I'm hoping that I get to start that pretty soon. The next one is, I still am kind of surprised that I'm saying how much I'm looking forward to this book, but that is actually The Lonesome Crown by Brian Lee Durfee, and that's book 3 of the 5 Warrior Angels series. So we have The Forgetting Moon and Blackest Heart. Now, I made a largely very negative review for Forgetting Moon after reading this book. And I thought it had potential, but that there were just so many flaws, issues, tropes, and I was still planning on reading the second book, but it was going to be very, very low on the list. So I mentioned a couple of other times, I think in videos too, that Brian Lee Durfee, shout out Brian Lee Durfee Reviews in the description, actually saw the video and commented on it, and he sent me the second book, and he even signed it. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. It's in silver, but sent me the second book, and so I said, you know what, you're going to send me a book, I'm going to read that book now. And I read it and was very happy that Blackest Heart really did shift gears and made it very clear that a lot of the things I had issues with were actually intentional, and I could kind of see more where he was trying to go with it. So it's still something that I think has some flaws, is from a new author, but I am actually really excited to see the third book, where it kind of goes full tilt into where he was going with it, whereas a lot of book 1 I felt like was kind of there to misdirect you and make you think certain things that weren't really going to happen, which is something he promised, but for me it didn't really start to get delivered until the second book. The second book just felt more like a book that he wanted to write. I feel like book 1 was, trying to set things up, doing the things you expect. Book 2 had some really goofy scenes and just kind of ridiculous ones, but they were also some of my favorite scenes, like a shark battle, which I'm not going to say anymore. You have to read it if you want to find out about the shark battle. But there was just, this felt more like really what Brian Lee Durfee wanted to get across. And so Lonesome Crown Book 3, I am excited to get to. So some others I do want to mention really quick that go along with ones I talked about as some of the best. I did get on paperback some old used copies of the second Thomas Covenant, The Unbeliever trilogy. After the way the first one ended, I am really not sure what to expect with the second one, but I'm excited to find out because Tom Wilson's writing is fantastic. Now, I just got done talking about how much I am enjoying The Crown of Stars by Kate Elliott, so I actually got a trilogy from her, which is the Crossroads trilogy. So Traitor's Gate, Spirit Gate, and Shadow Gate. And that was not the correct order, I just realized. It goes Spirit, Shadow, and then Traitors. But a trilogy which I haven't actually heard much, I don't really know anything about, but it said Kate Elliott on it, so I bought it. And I also was able to get a more recent Kate Elliott book at my used bookstore called Cold Magic, which just came out a few years ago. So I thought, honestly, okay, I say a few years ago, this is advertising book 2 coming out in 2011. So more than a few years ago, but it's a lot more recent than Crown of Stars, at least, because that was in the 90s. So I'm not that old. Shut up. But excited for those as well. Along the Mark Lawrence train. Right now, the only other Mark Lawrence book I actually own is Prince of Fools. Also hoping to get some more of those here soon as well. But this is another trilogy I definitely will want to read, and kind of all of it in general. And then I am really excited to start the Memory of Sorrow Thorn series, starting with the Dragonbone Chair. I was lucky enough once again to find a basically brand new overstock copy at my local used bookstore of this series. I've heard a lot of really good things on it, and it's one of the big classic series that I have still not actually read yet, so I'm really excited to get this read. It's definitely something I want to get to. It sounds like it's going to be something I'm really going to enjoy, and I have a couple of other miscellaneous Tad Williams books that I've gotten over the years and have not read either yet, so depending on how this goes, we'll definitely go from there. But I really do think that it's going to be a book that I enjoy. Now, of course, if Brandon Sanderson ends up releasing anything this year, that always goes on the things I'm looking forward to. It sounds like there might be the next Skyward book, maybe, from the State of the Sanderson when I looked at that, but I'm not really sure. Of course, if, Thorn of Emberlane wanted to be released, definitely wouldn't complain about Thorn of Emberlane. If that could be released at some point, I would be very, very happy. So those definitely would be the other books that I would love to see released, and would definitely be reading there. But otherwise, that pretty much is going to finish up what my favorites and the things I'm really looking forward to are. Let me know in the comments, what are your favorite things you read this year, or what are some new releases that you're really looking forward to as well. Even though I already have way too many books, I'm always happy to add new things. And it's really always nice hearing recommendations or hearing what you think. If you agree or disagree with my thoughts on some of the books that I have mentioned, kind of going from there and just continuing the conversation. So definitely let me know. If you do enjoy and want to see more of my content, then definitely make sure to subscribe. And if you enjoyed this video, then feel free to give it a like.